Hey there, YouTube. I got a new book review for you. A book that's just come out. And today we're going to be talking about Against the Demon World by D.M. Ritzlin. Against the Demon World. You may or may not know this, but D.M. Ritzlin is Dave Ritzlin, who owns and operates DMR Books. And if you're not familiar with DMR Books, well, you probably should be, because they're one of the, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but in my mind, they're one of the premier publishers of sword and sorcery and fantasy, and even republishing quite a bit of classics over the last few years. So check out DMR Books if you haven't. But yeah, DM Ritzlin is the guy behind DMR Books. And I'll tell you straight off, Against the Demon World, I like this way more than I thought I would. If you know anything about me, you probably know that I don't like much of anything, just in general. You've seen some of the things I put on this channel. There are obvious things that I like, but I could count on, two hands and 2 feet how many things I actually like. This one surprised me quite a bit. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. So I'm going to tell you why I liked it. I'm going to tell you about the story a little bit, and I'll explain why I liked it. Previously, I had read Necromancy and Niltsteria. And I always have to look at it. Niltsteria, that word throws me off every time. Niltsteria is the name of the fictional world that Ritzlin has created. And I think pretty much everything he's written takes place in Niltsteria. I'm pretty sure. I read this was the first thing he published. It's a collection of shorts, and it just didn't move me at all. I didn't care for it that much. And the reason I didn't like this one so much, a lot of people did like this. So first of all, just pad anything I say, in my opinion on this stuff. You're watching this video, so I guess I'm supposed to tell you my opinion matters. But the reality is my opinion does not matter as much as other readers of this sort of fiction. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I've read just a tiny, tiny portion of this sort of thing. And most of what I've read from anybody I didn't like. But the reason I didn't like this is that a lot of the stories kind of ended with a shrug. It's like the protagonist he either breaks even at the end of the story. He doesn't come ahead and doesn't lose. He just kind of breaks even. Or he kind of just loses a little bit. I don't know. Ritzlin is a huge fan of heavy metal. I think anyone that knows what he's published knows that. This felt kind of grunge to me, believe it or not. The protagonists were like a little bit of a slacker in this. And if Ritzlin watches this, he'll probably disagree with that. And if you read this, you'll probably disagree with that. But my takeaway from this, I didn't really care for the protagonists very much. They were kind of just bumbling around and just very cavalier. And they were victims of their circumstances. And at the end of some of these stories, not all of them, but in some of these stories, they ended with the protagonist being like okay with the fact that they were victims of circumstance. And to me, that's not very metal. That's kind of like grunge. So I didn't care for this, okay? I'm telling you all that to tell you that Against the Demon World worked for me because it was quite a bit different than Ritzlin's first collection of shorts. This is a novel. So first of all, this is one story. It's a proper book. And the action and the plot line and the motivation and especially the ending of this is a very satisfying ending. It doesn't feel at all like the stuff that I didn't like about Necromancy and Niltsteria. I said it without even looking at it that time. I've kind of got it memorized. So what is Against the Demon World all about? Let me put on my spectacles to tell you a little bit more about this Against the Demon World. I'm getting old and feeble, guys, and I suffer from brain rot. So I got a bunch of notes that I wrote down as well, just to make sure that I cover all the bases on this story, because it helps me when I'm reading it to jot stuff down, especially this one, because there's names and words in here that I'll never remember them unless I jot them down. And that's the thing with a lot of fantasy. This would be considered sword and sorcery, but any sort of fantasy stuff that I read, I struggle with the naming conventions and the character names and stuff like that. And I've written some of that stuff, and I've got some really stupid names for people that I've written, into my characters as well. But usually when I come up with a stupid name from one of my stories, it's something I pulled from a musician I like or something like that. So it's easy for me to remember, or an album. Like there's a lot of like Autechre albums and Aphex Twin songs and stuff like that that are just nonsense words that those guys created. But I can remember them because I looked at them 1,000 times over my life. So when I read something that somebody else wrote that's got some bonkers words and names in it, those things probably mean something to that author, but they don't mean anything to me. So that's why I got to jot them down and I got to reference them. I'm rambling already. I told myself this was going to be a short video before I started, and I could already tell it's going to be longer than it needs to be. Sorry. But anyways, against the demon world. Okay, so what is the demon world? So in this land of Niltsteria, there's two moons, Uz and Gluz, or Uz and Gluz. I'm not sure how to say it. The majority of this story takes place on the moon of Uz, or Uz. It's probably Uz, because Uz sounds like slime or something. There's a lot of slimy stuff. This movie, I think of this story as if it was a movie, and that's probably one of the reasons I liked it more than I thought it would. It's really R-rated. This is an R-rated story. So if you like that sort of stuff, violence, nudity, it's not like unnecessary nudity, but there is nudity and there is sex scenes in it. This would be like a hard R if this were to be put into a film. Oh God, I gotta stay on track with this. So anyways, Uz, the moon of Uz. It reminds me very much of the world that the Masters of the Universe cartoon, or I guess there's a new movie coming out, that sort of thing. It reminds me of that sort of land. Uz does, because there's barbaric stuff happening. There's not really demons in Masters of the Universe that I remember, but the characters, you know, Skeletor's crew and all that, Beastman and all those kind of fellows, they all sort of look like demons. You know, they're bipedal. Everything in this story is bipedal as well. It has that feel because there's technology on Uz as well. It's not technology like engines and, you know, laser blasters or any of that kind of stuff. It's not sci-fi. It's like organic technology. There's a feeling of, well, for example, there's an aircraft, an airship, I guess you could call it, that does travel interplanetarily as well. So it's like a spacecraft, but it's a living organism that is utilized throughout the story. There's that kind of stuff. So it's technological, but it's not like from the future sort of stuff. It's just different. It's different. And that combination of some sort of like machinery or some sort of mechanics happening with the barbaric sort of action that takes place really gives me a feeling of Masters of the Universe in a way. So I'm going to try to summarize the plot for you without giving too much away. The protagonist is named Avok, A-V-O-K, or Avok. I'm not sure. I think Avok makes sense because it's like the word havoc, like causing havoc, calamity, problems, mayhem, sort of a thing. He's a barbarian on the terrestrial land of Niltsteria. Proper barbarian. He's got a village, he's got elders, he's fighting ogres and stuff like that at the beginning. And there's like this religious cult that comes to the land that wants to sort of take over. They're using religion as a means to occupy the land and convert everybody. And then by converting them, their plans are to subjugate the people. And Avok and his people just aren't having it. And the leader of this cult, the word cult's not used in the story. That's my word for it, okay? But this religious group, his name is Ask Felthor. Pretty sure about that. Let me double check. Okay, no, it's not Ask. It's Arsk. A-R-S-K. Arsk Felthor. And the reason I wrote that down on my notes is because it sounds like Ars Felter. Like Ars is in like the British word for ass, Feltor. Like he felt her ass. Arsk Felthor. Or he's some sort of like bungler, this guy. Like he's into like bungling people. And Arsk Felthor is this guy. There's all sorts of... Ritzlin is really... I talked about the naming convention and how I struggle with it, but I like the way that he writes names and stuff like that, to me, there's a little bit of humor behind this stuff. I don't know if that's his intention. I think it's his intention, but like there's also this other like this little like dweeby sort of demon. Oh man, those like Urakasuki Doji demon beast invasion hentais, I guess that was like one of the earlier hentais. There was and those sorts of Japanese ultra R-rated anime from back in the late 80s, early 90s, whatever. There was always like a little dweeby sort of demon that would like, he was like a little perverted thing that would like hover around, or he would like get into like the girls' locker rooms and all this kind of stuff. He was this little sicko, sort of beta demon hybrid sort of a thing in those anime and hentai or whatever. Well, there's one of those kind of things in Against the Demon World. There's no hentai in this. Don't get me wrong. This is R-rated, but there's no hentai. There is some tentacle porn though. I'll get to the tentacle porn. But anyways, it's not porn. It's not porn. There's this little demon thing that hovers around, and he's kind of like the gimpy sort of loser beta demon. And his name is Scrotar. Scrotar. So like that's what I'm talking about. Like Ritzlin has his way of coming up with names that are funny to me. Scrotar is this thing's name. And it's like scrotum. He's like the little scrotum, the little ball sack of a demon. And he's always bumbling around, and he kind of just sucks. And he provides a modicum of comic relief throughout the story. So there's all these kinds of names for these characters and stuff like that I think are interesting. And even though I struggle with them, it gives this whole story an element of fun. And that's really the theme of Against the Demon World. This is a very fun story. It's heavy at times, but it doesn't feel heavy when you're done reading it. It moves very smoothly. It's a pretty easy read. It's got lots of action, and it just feels fun. It's an enjoyable thing. All right, there's a real bad guy, like the main demon dude, that if you look at the cover, let me put it on the screen here, you look at the cover. The main demon dude he's like this giant muscular sort of fella, but his whole entire skull is like a wrecking ball, like a steel wrecking ball with spikes on it, like a mace, like a weapon, a mace. But his whole face is like that. He's got no eyes, he's got no mouth, he's got no organs, but he can still speak and everything through this metallic sort of cranium that he has with these spikes on it. And I'm going to look at my paper to tell you the name of this fella. His name is Nelgastrathos. Nelgastrothos. Nelgastrathos is the spike face man. Anyways, this guy, Nelg, I'm going to call him Nelg for short, Nelg. He's a demon, so he's got these powers as well. And Avok, the hero of the story, Nelg puts a tentacle on the back of his neck, okay? And it like comes up over his head like this, okay? Almost like one of those deep sea creatures, those like lanternfish or whatever they are that live in the blackness of under the sea. And they've got like the little light bulb that comes across. Well, he attaches this eyeball to the back of Avok's head that comes up like this. It's an eyeball and a tentacle like this. And it's got a little eyeball here. And he uses that thing to see where Avok is going. I'm way ahead in the plot. I told you I was going to tell you about the plot of this thing, and I'm already like halfway into the book at this point. Basically, Avok's sister, her soul gets taken by these cults that come to the religious group that comes there. And what I like is a really cool idea. If you've read anything of mine or you've seen my videos or whatever, I like the commodity of the intangible. I like stories that take something that is not tangible, but turns it into something that could be traded or dealt with or sold or bargained with and stuff like that. And Avok's sister's soul was put into like this little flask or something, like a little gemstone that could be worn around your neck, like an amulet or something like that. It's like it almost becomes like this effervescent sort of soft drink that's put into this thing. And her soul was in there, and it's taken away, and Avok wants to get it back. So like the story, his motivation throughout this whole thing is to reclaim his sister's soul. If for no other reason then he can have her rest in peace. He just doesn't want her soul being in the possession of these demon jerks, right? On Uz. And that's his motivation throughout the whole thing. But so he's going up there and he's trying to get it back, get her soul back and everything. He's trying to figure all this out. And Nelg puts this tentacle thing so he could see everywhere Avok's going. So throughout the whole story, this is what I'm talking about. There's a fun element to this, and there's an absurdist element. I don't think you could, I like absurdism quite a bit. And I don't think you could read this I don't think you could read this and enjoy this story without having some sort of affection for the absurd. Because you just got to imagine there's this, bulky, tough, bodybuilding, blonde-haired Avok barbarian warrior going to this moon to get his sister's soul back. And he's fighting all these people and he's going on adventures and he's going from one place to the other and doing all these brave things. All the while he's got this dangling eyeball tentacle, like an octopus tentacle. You know what I'm saying? Like just a big phallic thing, a big limp. It waves around and stuff like that coming down, and it's always everywhere he's going and it's moving around. He's got this obnoxious, unsightly thing dangling off of his head the whole time. That's absurd. There's a kind of a trauma feeling to this story. It's not as like silly as trauma. Trauma is absurd to the point where things are silly. But I'm thinking of like Tromeo and Juliet. Wasn't there like some sort of like penis monster in that tentacle thing? This kind of stuff like that, because here's what happens. Okay, I got to look at this lady's name. Hang on. Heltoria. Heltoria is this lady's name. Now she's like a nymphomaniac throughout this whole thing. And she's this demon woman. She's a female. Well, I guess when you say nymphomaniac, you just assume it's female. Because I don't know if there is such a thing as a male nymphomaniac. I didn't need to say she, but she's like the evil Lynn character from the He-Man world, except I think she's got a tail, if I remember correctly. No, she doesn't have a tail. She's got horns on her head. In fact, she's on the cover of the book. So if you look at the cover, I'll put it up on the screen here. You can see her. She's got these like ram horns on her head, like handlebars. You know what I'm saying? And she's this nymphomaniac, and she's got a castle and everything. So Nelg, the spiky face guy, wants to conquer this nymphomaniac's land and her castle. It's like his rival was this ram-horned demoness, Nympho. So he puts this eyeball on Avok's head so he could spy on him as he goes up there and he's going to use Avok to sort of conquer his rival, Heltoria. Well, there's a scene in this story, okay, where these two have a relationship, Avok and Heltoria. He's kind of like entranced by her. He becomes a gladiator for her. Like, and he becomes like her prize gladiator. She's got an arena and she has all these people fight and stuff like that. Lots of action in this story. And he's got this eyeball. He's fighting all these people and he's winning all these battles with this big dangling thing off his head. Well, there's a certain point in the story where she wants to help him get it off because he can't get it off. He tries to cut it. He can't get it off. He can't do anything about it, but it's driving him nuts, right? It would drive anybody nuts. So she decides she wants to get it off by deep-throating the thing. That's what I'm talking about. There's like a little bit of a trauma stuff happening in this. It's a hard R. And she tries to deep-throat the tentacle and the eyeball and like try to bite it off. But it like hurts her mouth when she tries to do it because this tentacle thing is made out of some sort of magic where you can't cut it or anything like that. So that happens. Why did I tell you that? I think I told you that to tell you about Heltoria because she's a very important figure. There's another female character in the story as well. So Heltoria is like the slut. You know, she's like the super freak, the kind you don't bring home to mama, right? But there's another female in the story that Avok falls for that's kind of like the opposite of Heltoria. And her name is Izura. I-Z-U-R-A. Izura. That one is easier for me to say and remember. Lots of Z's. Ritzlin, Nilteria, Ilzura. Is it Ilzura? Izura. Izura is probably the way you would say it. Izura. It's almost like a Japanese sounding name. I don't know if Ritzlin is into Japanese stuff, but this story would do very well in Japan, I think. Izura. She's like the wholesome one. So underneath Heltoria's castle, there's like this underground realm of people that have sort of been condemned to live underground. And Isra is she's like the princess of this land. Her father gives Alvik a sword, like their ancestral sword, and that's what he uses later on in the story. But Alvik falls for Isra. Throughout the story, he's kind of like he's entranced by Heltoria. She's like like I said, the super freak, and then Isra is kind of like the wholesome little house on the prairie type of woman. She's like the trad wife of the story, and he goes for the trad wife, which is one of the things I like about this story. This is a very this story is for against the demon world. It's written for men. I think it's pretty obvious. Women could like this too, but there's a certain male sensitivity. No, a male, that was a slip, Freudian slip. There is a male sensibility. There is no male sensitivity in this story. When we get to the things I dislike about it, that'll be something I come back to. Remind me to come back to that there is no male sensitivity in this. But there is a male sensibility in this story that is quite apparent. And any sensible man would choose the trad wife over the super freak. So this whole trad wife phenomena it's kind of fizzled out, but like especially like during COVID and stuff like that, it was like the hot topic. It was a buzzword, this trad wife thing. Isra is the trad wife, and that's who Alvik ultimately falls for and wants to start some sort of future with. Okay. I guess I'm telling you all the characters and just bumbling my way through the plot of this story. I'm bumbling my way through it like Scrotar. I feel like Scrotar trying to tell you the story of against the demon world. So yeah, this story is fun. It's fun, and it has priorities. I'll give you an example of a priority. There's a scene where Alvik is like falling into this abyss. He's just barely hanging on. He's about ready to die, right? And the only way that Ritzlin could find to write him getting out of this predicament is for Isra to take off her dress and make a rope out of her dress to put down to Alvik so he could pull himself up. So she's like half naked from that point forward. That's where the priorities are in this story. Is that realistic? No. Is it silly? Yeah, kinda. Is it absurd? Yes. Is it entertaining? Yeah, it kind of is. Like, that's the stuff about this story that I like quite a bit. It doesn't take itself too seriously. I don't even know if anything Ritzlin has written takes itself too seriously. I think he writes for the fun of writing. I think he gets a kick out of writing these stories. And there's just some plot devices throughout. Even the fact that Alvik's got this tentacle eyeball on his head. If Nelg wanted to spy on him and he's this demon with all these magical powers, there are so many more practical methods that could have been employed to do that other than putting a tentacle eyeball on the back of this guy's head. Like, that plot device is just absurd for the sake of absurdism, and it gives this story some charm. It makes it really, like I said, fun. I keep saying fun. It makes it fun to read. And then, without giving out too much away, this story has it's got a very satisfying ending. I'm not going to tell you how it ends, because I know a lot of you don't like spoilers. I say a lot of you. I'm talking like maybe 10 people that are going to watch this video. There is no lot of you. Like, it's not a lot. If there was a parking lot and you were all in it, it would be like one parking space of the lot. So like the space of you don't like spoilers. So I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but I will mention that Alvik's tentacle eyeball thing. So you could even, let me show you this. I'm going to reveal the secrets of this YouTube channel. You can kind of see my notes. The title of this thing, it says thoughts on video. Thoughts for video is what I wrote down. So I'm going to make sure I covered all this with you. Talked about that. Talked about that. I talked about that. Talked about that. All right. I didn't say this yet. And this is something that is remarkable. In Necromancy and Niltsteria, one of the other things I didn't like, not just how the stories kind of ended in this, and the protagonists weren't my kind of protagonists. This was the first, I think, the first thing that Ritzlin really wrote himself, and his writing was not bad. He's as good as or a better writer than anybody else out there, frankly. But the writing just didn't. The writing was just somewhat, I don't want to say clunky. I'm not anyone to talk about that at all. Seriously, like I don't read enough to say what's good or bad. But the writing style in Necromancy and Niltsteria, it just didn't feel very polished to me. Whereas his prose and I say prose because, you know, like if you say prose instead of writing, it's like you're complimenting it just by saying prose. You know, no one says you write really crappy prose. They just say, no, you're a crappy writer. But I'm using the word prose to emphasize the fact that that Ritzlin's prose in Against the Demon World is really, really sharp. It's very polished. It's not Polish. I'm Polish for the most part. Ritzlin, what is Dave Ritzlin? Now that's a question for the ages. Ritzlin. I don't even know. The guy he's one of those fellas, if you look at him, he could sort of just appear in any land on earth and claim to be a native of that land. There's like an Eastern European thing happening, but I could also put Ritzlin in like Turkey. It'd fit in Turkey. I could put Ritzlin in, where else could I stick him? He could be a German fella. Frankly, he could even be a Scottish for that matter. The curly hair thing kind of works there as well. He doesn't have curly hair. Ritzlin doesn't have curly hair. He's not like, Webster or somebody like that. He's got like wavy hair. He's got a very healthy mane, a very healthy head of hair. But I don't know where you could place him. You could even place Ritzlin to an extent. I could see him being somewhere in South America, believe it or not. The next interview he does, someone needs to get to the bottom. We need to get like a ancestry.com on Ritzlin to find out where this guy's heritage comes from. It doesn't matter, but I'm curious about it. Why did I get on that tangent about that? Ritzlin, what was I saying? His prose. Yeah, his prose. This story is written really well. It is really, really well written. I mean, the sentences are smooth. It's a very easy read. The only thing that I stumble with is the names, and that's just my own dyslexia and my brain rot. I have trouble with names and stuff like that. It's extremely well written, and it's a vast improvement. It's an improvement to the point where he's written some things between Necromancy of Niltsteria and this that I haven't read, that I'm inclined to go back and read some of that stuff that I missed, because his writing has improved vastly. Linear storytelling, I didn't mention that, and that needs to be said, is that this story is very linear. It goes from one place to another. I don't think there's any flashbacks or dream sequences necessarily. He has visions of Isra, but it's not like a dream sequence. It's not hard to follow. So if you do prefer a story that is very linear, like the character goes from point A to point B, and you could even see like some foreshadowing of that. Like there's no curveballs thrown at you. There's no trick endings. There's no M. Night Shyamalan stuff at the end of this. Ritzlin could be, I could place him in Egypt. Not India necessarily, but he's got an Egyptian quality to him, Ritzlin. Neither here nor there. The story is very linear. It goes from one point to the other. It's very easy to follow. I have that on my notes. I had to tell you that. What else do I got? The magic stuff. Ritzlin does not waste any time explaining the mechanics of all of this, these spells and the demons and how all this works. That organic airship that travels around and goes from the moon back down to Niltsteria and all that. You don't need to know how it works. I mean, he kind of tells you how it works, and I don't want to give it away, but it's not like, some guys that write this sort of stuff, they'll spend pages and pages and pages going over the chemistry behind these things and the physics behind it all. And he doesn't give a damn about that. And that's what makes the story move so quickly. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it entertaining. If you, I don't care about that stuff either. You know, this is all fiction, so you don't really need to know the nuts and bolts of things. Just tell me what's going on and what the meaning is behind the things that are going on. The meaning behind the things. That's one of the things I don't like so much about it. I'm gonna come back to that. I gotta come back to the stuff that I don't like. Okay, so there's quite a bit of humor in this, and there's some lines in this that strike a chord with me. One of my favorite lines. So Avek's father, like the elder of his village, and when Arsk Felthor comes to try to like convince him to sell their souls to this new god and all this kind of stuff, Avek's father says this. He says, "Arsk Felthor, you are a weakling and a dissembler. Leave the hall." Now, how many people are going to know the reference there? That's a reference to the Manowar lyric, "Wimps and posers leave the hall." You're a weakling and a dissembler. Wimps and posers leave the hall. Ritzlin puts that kind of stuff into his stories. That I have a feeling there's a lot more of that I didn't pick up on. But I think there's something that anyone that is into the same sort of stuff that Ritzlin is into is going to find nuggets in the stories, inside jokes and things like that they'll probably recognize. All right, yeah, I think that's all the stuff I had to say as far as what I liked about this story. This is a terrible video. Why are you even watching it at this point? It's raining out here. I don't even know how well you could hear me. I'm talking into a crowbar, but it's pouring down back there. I'm kind of chilly out here, but I'm gonna keep going. I'm almost done. What did I not like about Against the Demon World? I don't do ratings on numbers and stuff like that. I like this a lot more than I dislike. The only stuff I really didn't like is that I think that there are times where there could have been some introspection, especially from Avek. Most contemporary sword and sorcery protagonists are two-dimensional. Most of the guys that write this stuff nowadays do not put introspection into their characters. They kind of just, they're kind of just like hunky guys. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier about, like, there's no male sensitivity. The story has a male sensibility about it, but Ascor, god damn it, Avek does not have any moments of weakness. He's trying to get his sister's soul back, and we know that's important to him. But the whole idea of that, to me, like, that's where I don't want a page about the mechanics of this world, but I do want a page about the mechanics of Avek's mind. I want to know why. Maybe something about his relationship with his sister. I know a lot of dudes, they wouldn't go through all this trouble to get their sister's soul back. So why is this so critical for him? And there's moments throughout the story where he faces these confrontations and these problems and his whole relationship with Heltoria and all this kind of stuff, where he's kind of like a puppet for her for a good portion of it. I want to know what the guy's feeling. There is no sensitivity to Avek. And that's a criticism I have of this story, but it's not unique to Against the Demon World. It's really coming down out there. It's something that plagues all contemporary sword and sorcery for me. It's why I don't like a lot of sword and sorcery. I write sword and sorcery from time to time, but I don't read a lot of it because I would like to feel part of the character. And if the character doesn't feel a lot, I can't feel as one with the character. I think it's an important thing to have a likable character, and a likable character has to be somewhat vulnerable. Avek is not vulnerable, but again, no sword and sorcery protagonist from like the last 20 years is vulnerable. All the guys that write this stuff, most of them write these bulletproof sort of characters, and I guess that's the appeal of this for a lot of people. It's just not necessarily an appeal that I have. And it's not like Avek is invincible. There's several points in the story where he comes close to dying, and he recognizes that he may have just died there. But he has this uncompromising, cavalier sense of confidence throughout the story. It's kind of not appealing to me as a person. Like that kind of person in real life, I wouldn't want to be around them. I don't think anybody would want to be around that sort of person in real life. So I don't like that. But if that is the character trait that he has, there's a way to write that into the story introspectively. So if that's Avic's like sincere personality, that's what he is, how does that feel to him to be that way? Like, there are moments in the story where that could pose a problem for him. I don't want the guy to go to therapy throughout the thing. I don't want him to talk to a shrink about it, but I would like to know, how does he deal with that? Or if he is that confident, he would have to naturally feel superior to others, which he is. He is superior to most of the people in this story. How does that superiority feel? Even if it's like him on a high horse talking down to the other people in the story, which he doesn't do. But if he were to do that, that's almost a form of introspection to me. That's a little bit more insight into the mechanics of Avic's mind. I would like to see some of that. What else do I got? One more thing in the line of introspection. So when there are opportunities for some introspection to take place, Ritzlin has the narrator of the story provide that insight rather than the characters themselves. So the narrator says this at a key point in the story. This doesn't give anything away. Don't worry about it. The two bowed their heads and closed their eyes in silent prayer. Avic felt uncomfortable doing this, for he rarely called upon Aglaron or any other god. He believed the man should rely on his own skills and cunning to solve his problems. But there is a limit to what men can do. I wrote that down because to me, that's an opportunity for Avic to have an epiphany in the story. He never really has an epiphany. He never comes to a realization. He's maybe a little bit wiser at the end of this story, but he's not necessarily a better man at the end of the story than he was at the beginning. He's still kind of essentially the same guy. I like protagonists that go from one point to another, or they reach some sort of final conclusion. Some existential dilemma is confronted by the end of the story. And it doesn't happen here. And again, it doesn't happen in 99.999% of contemporary sword and sorcery. So this is just me talking about this book as a piece of literature, not a piece of sword and sorcery literature, because if you view this through the prism of modern sword and sorcery, and I keep saying modern because the classic sword and sorcery authors, they put epiphanies and, fatal conclusions and character growth and introspection. That's sprinkled throughout all of those old stories from the 30s and mid-century era. But nowadays, they just don't do that anymore. I think that Avic's realization at this point of the story that I wrote down, where he has to find a way to bow his head and pray, is probably like the most important moment in the whole story. And it's dealt with from the narrator's perspective. The narrator tells us what Avic is doing and dismisses that in a short paragraph. I would like a page or two about that. That's what would take this Against the Demon World from a great story that I would recommend you read this. I'm going to tell you who it's for, but I recommend you read this story no matter what. But it would take it from like a story that I recommend my buddies to read. It would take it from that to like one that, man, I really wish there was a hardcover version of this so I could put it on my shelf and display it. Like that's the next tier that this could have gone to if that moment of prayer wasn't just dismissed as just a matter of fact sort of a thing. So that's what I didn't like about it. I talked a lot, but it's a short list of things I don't like. It really just comes down to character growth and introspection. I wanted more of that, and there's very little of it throughout the story. But again, none of this stuff, no one that does this puts that in there. So Ritzlin is right in line with his contemporaries. And the reason I like this way more than I like Ritzlin's contemporaries is because, for one, this was made for a male audience. I don't like things that are written for women. or even if they're not written for women, some guys write stuff in such a way that there's like a female angle to a lot of it, where like even if some of like the more, I was going to name somebody. I was going to name. There are certain women that write sword and sorcery. All right, how can I say this person's name without saying her name? All right, her name rhymes with. There's not another word that rhymes with that. Her name rhymes with Lucin Crack Dongle. Okay, if this lady's name rhymes with Lucin Crack Dongle. Crack dongle. Dongle, like, is the thing that goes into a computer dongle, right? So there's people like that, women that write this stuff and buy this stuff, and they want stories that have something, a little bit of it for them in there. And I don't think Ritzlin ever puts that in, and I like that about him. I like that about him as a man. I like that about him as an author. And that's why Against the Demon World, God damn it, is it really coming down out there? It's only like 7 in the morning right now. What time is it? It's 8 in the morning. I started this at 7. I've been doing this damn video for an hour already. I know it's not an hour long. There's going to be a lot of outtakes. I do these videos more for my own amusement than anything else. It gives me a chance to sort of put my thoughts into words and focus in such a way. What was I saying? Ritzlin. Yeah, I like this story because it is made for a male audience. And most of the sword and sorcery that comes out now, all that new age, tranny stuff, all of that sort of thing is just retarded. And it's absurd in a retarded way. Ritzlin's stuff and most of the authors that he's published with the DMR are the kind of like the anecdote to a lot of that. Not anecdote. Gosh damn it. Not anecdote. Antidote to that. And that stuff's plaguing it all. So as much as I may criticize Avic for being this sort of like, beefcake sort of a guy that doesn't think a whole lot and all this, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's the yang to the yin that is all of the PC woke sort of bullshit sword and sorcery. There's really, that always used to just be like a sci-fi and a high fantasy thing. Like sword and sorcery is always kind of like it would cater to like the more traditional masculine audience, right? And that's all been kind of overtaken. If you look at those new age sword and sorcery guys, they're crowdfunding things. You could buy a Rivian with the amount of money that they're making from that stuff. So it's ridiculous. All right, who is this for? See, I got this at the top too. I wrote that right there because I wanted to make sure as I was reading this that I got my notes in the hopes that I could put together a video about this book that was under 10 minutes long, which I failed, obviously. Who is this for? This is for fans that like fast-paced action without a whole lot of nonsense in between. Like I said, he doesn't waste words on how things work. He just gets to the point. It's a very linear story. You know where this story is going. You can tell where it's going. There are surprises. It's not completely predictable. I don't want you to think that, but it's like you could see the points on the map where this guy's traveling and what he's doing and how it's all going to pan out. There's a very strong modern pulp feel to this. Everybody talks about pulp fiction nowadays. Quentin Tarantino sucks, man. I can't stand that guy. I've hated everything he's ever done, and I've given him several fair chances. He's one of the worst filmmakers ever. And at the same time, he's one of the most adored filmmakers. And it drives me nuts that he came out with that movie Pulp Fiction, because now anytime we talk about, books with yellow pages that are fit in your pocket, that were never meant to last as long as they've lasted, all that kind of stuff, that's pulp. And this book this Against the Demon one has a very pulp feel to it. But it's got nothing to do with that movie. That movie had nothing to do with these books either. I hate him so bad, Tarantino. I seriously just despise that man. I can't talk about him here, though, because that's not what you're here for. One day I'll do a whole video how much I hate him. He's on my enemies list. He's right there with, like, Penn Jillette and Moby and David Carradine and several other individuals. This book has a very modern pulp feel. And if you read that sort of stuff, you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to say any more about it. Proper doses of smut and humor. And I use the word smut here because it's kind of smutty. A lot of sex in this story, but it's not sex. I hate reading sex scenes. I told you that in the video about that mind benders or whatever the hell it was called. What was it called? Shambhala. If you go back in my last couple of videos, you watch a Shambhala review. I don't like reading about people having sex. It just doesn't. It's a visual thing. I don't want to read about it. And there's sex in this story, but you don't read about all that. Like he doesn't spend time talking about this goes in here and this comes out there and this squirts that and this oozes that and all this kind of stuff. None of that. You don't need all that. That's not the purpose of this. But it is kind of smutty because, well, Heltoria is just a nympho. I mean, she's a straight up nymphomaniac, and he makes sure that you understand that she's a nympho. I like that. And it's violent. When people die in this, they don't just die. They die in a very gratuitous manner. You know, we're talking like blood bursting out and brains and squishing this and squishing that. And again, a sort of a trauma sort of feel. But at the same time, it's the kind of like a glorious sort of death in these stories. I'm really getting tired, man. My voice is starting to get hoarse. There's several memorable visual moments. What page I'm talking about who this is recommended for. So this is okay. Hang on. This is recommended for people that like fast-paced action, that don't want a lot of bullshit in between, that don't want the mechanics of how magic works and all that kind of stuff in this world. People that like linear action, people that like smut and gore, but not smut to the point where it overtakes the whole purpose of the rest of the story. It's complementary smut. If you like all that, if you want something with memorable visual moments. So there are scenes in this story, like I said, about the deep-throating the tentacle eyeball and trying to bite it off. Like that is stuck in my head. I'll never get that out of my brain, and I'm grateful that I won't ever get that out of my brain because that was a fantastic scene, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of little things that happen, key frames of celluloid in this thing that you'll remember forever after you read it. If you like those sorts of things, which you should, everybody does, then this story is for you. Very cleanly written as well. So if you like stories without a whole lot of like, dream sequences and retrospectives and unnecessary foreshadowing, and it's just the prose is very sharp and polished. There's no mistakes that I caught. It's very editorialized. You know, I think Ritzlin edits his own stories. I don't think he hires that out. He's very good at it. It's all very, very well written. Against the Demon World, let me take my spectacles off to deliver this point. Against the Demon World is legitimately fun. It is a fun book, and god damn it, right now, at this time in history and this time of the world, I think fun is something we could all use a little bit more of. It's got no pretenses about it. It's not trying to be some sort of Bible that you'll live by. There's no life advice in this thing. It's not a self-help book masquerading as fiction. It's got no political agendas. It's got none of that. This is simply a fun read for people that just want to escape the misery of their lives and kind of like the misery of the state of the world right now. We all could use a little bit of fun, and Against the Demon World is just that. It is fun, and for people that like fun, I recommend it. That's the end of this video. Goodbye.